open a refrigerator, and it feels like that's how we keep our food safe. But for most of human history, people trusted something very different. The refrigerator solved one problem and quietly removed something else, something humans had relied on for 10,000 years without even realizing it. It slows bacterial growth, including the harmful kind that causes spoilage and disease. What it also does, without anyone particularly deciding this was a trade-off worth making, is stop the other kind of bacterial growth entirely. The kind that for the previous 10,000 years of human civilization had been transforming ordinary food into something biologically different from what you put in, denser in certain vitamins, richer in enzymes the body uses for digestion, filled with live microbial cultures, the kind that interacts directly with the human gut in ways refrigeration never could. The refrigerator was not a nutritional upgrade. It was a logistic solution that happened to eliminate something people didn't have the vocabulary to name yet. And before you picture yogurt marketing and kombucha trends, no. We're talking about 10,000 years of independent parallel development across every major civilization on Earth, all arriving at the same biological process for the same practical reason food spoils and fermentation stops it. The gut benefits were the side effects of solving a storage problem, and they were significant enough that every culture that discovered fermentation integrated it into daily life as a staple, not a supplement. 10 fermented foods, all developed independently across separate civilizations, all producing the same class of biological effect, and most of them are in sharp decline in Western diet from the moment mechanical refrigeration became commercially available in the early 20th century. Number 1 is yogurt, and the detail that reframes it is not what it contains, but how consistently it appears. Fermented milk in some form has been documented across India, the Middle East, Central Asia, and the Balkans for over 10,000 years, in cultures that had no contact with each other, all producing essentially the same product through the same biological process. The active mechanism is lactobacillus bacteria, specifically strains like L. bulgaricus and L. acidophilus, which ferment lactose into lactic acid, preserving the milk while populating it with live cultures that survive digestion and interact with the gut microbiome. Clinical research has since confirmed what 10,000 years of distributed use observed empirically regular consumption of live culture yogurt measurably improves digestive transit time, reduces symptoms of lactose intolerance, and supports immune function through gut-associated lymphoid tissue activation. The convergent independent development across every major ancient civilization is not coincidence. It is the longest multicultural clinical trial in recorded history. Number 2 is kefir, and the number that changes how you think about it is the strain count. Where yogurt typically contains 2 to 7 bacterial and yeast strains, kefir developed in the Caucasus Mountains and used across Eastern Europe for centuries contains anywhere from 30 to 50 distinct microbial strains in a symbiotic culture called a sif grain. That diversity matters because the human gut microbiome contains hundreds of distinct species, and broader spectrum inoculation produces measurably different effects than narrow spectrum. Research published in clinical nutrition journals has shown kefir consumption associated with reduced inflammatory markers, improved lactose digestion in clinically lactose intolerant patients, and measurable shifts in gut microbiome composition within 2 to 4 weeks of regular consumption. The people who made it in the Caucasus Mountains did not know about microbial diversity or inflammatory cytokines. They knew that people who drank it regularly seemed to get sick less often. They were correct. Number 3 is sauerkraut, and the thing most people don't know is what it is not. Sauerkraut is not pickled cabbage. Pickling uses vinegar and acid added externally to preserve food which produces no live cultures and none of the fermentation byproducts that make the biological difference. Sauerkraut is lacto-fermented cabbage produced by lactobacillus bacteria already present on the cabbage leaf surface, requiring nothing but salt and thyme. The fermentation process generates lactic acid as a preservative, produces B vitamins including B12, which plants almost never contain, increases the bioavailability of vitamin C compared to raw cabbage, and populates the finished product with live cultures that survive stomach acid and reach the lower digestive tract intact. It was a winter survival staple across northern and central Europe for centuries, carried on ships to prevent scurvy, eaten daily by populations with no other reliable source of fresh plant nutrition for months at a time. It kept people alive. The gut benefits were incidental to that primary function. Number 4 is kimchi, and the scale of diversity here is almost unreasonable. Korea has documented over 200 distinct regional kimchi varieties, each with slightly different ingredient profiles and fermentation conditions, all producing overlapping but distinct microbial communities. The core products lacto-fermented vegetables, typically Nipah cabbage with garlic, ginger, and chili generates lactobacillus kimchi and related strains alongside a range of bioactive compounds from the vegetable and spice matrix that researchers linked to anti-inflammatory activity, antimicrobial properties, and measurable effects on metabolic markers. Published studies have associated regular kimchi consumption with reduced body fat percentage and improved fasting blood glucose levels in human trials. The 200 regional varieties were not the result of culinary experimentation for its own sake. They were the accumulated result of centuries of local optimization, each community independently solving the fermentation problem with whatever was locally available and passing down the version that worked best. Now here's where the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, all fermented vegetables or dairy, all producing lactobacillus dominant cultures, all developed in cold climate civilizations where the preservation problem was most acute. The next group is different. They're fermented legumes and grains, developed in warm climate cultures, solving a different version of the same problem, and producing a meaningfully different biological profile in the process. Number 5 is miso, and the active compound here is not a probiotic but a prebiotic enzyme matrix. Miso is fermented soybean paste produced by inoculating soybeans with Aspergillus oryzae, a mold that breaks down soy proteins into amino acids and generates a dense concentration of digestive enzymes alongside a full complement of B vitamins, including B12. It has been a daily staple in Japan for over 1,000 years, typically consumed as soup at the first meal of the day. Research has linked regular miso consumption to reduced gastric cancer incidence in Japanese population studies, reduced risk of breast cancer, and measurable cardiovascular protective effects associations strong enough that the Japanese National Cancer Center has investigated the mechanisms formally. The enzyme matrix in miso begins pre-digesting the meal it accompanies before it reaches the stomach, reducing the digestive load on the pancreas in a way that has no equivalent in unfermented food. Number 6 is natto, the most biochemically unusual of the 10, and the one with the narrowest cultural adoption relative to its documented effects. Natto is fermented soybeans inoculated with Bacillus subtilis natto, producing a sticky, intensely flavored product that is an acquired taste by almost any standard. What it also produces is nattokinase, an enzyme with documented fibrinolytic activity, meaning it breaks down fibrin in blood clots, and the highest known food source concentration of vitamin K2, at approximately 1,000 micrograms per 100 grams. Vitamin K2 is critical for calcium metabolism, directing calcium into bones and away from arterial walls, and is almost completely absent from Western diets. Populations with the highest dietary K2 intake show measurably lower rates of arterial calcification and hip fracture. Natto provides more K2 per serving than any other documented food source by a significant margin. It has been eaten daily in certain regions of Japan for over 1,000 years. If natto had a personality, it would be that colleague who has the most impressive credentials in the building, never mentions them, and gets consistently overlooked at every promotion cycle because they make people slightly uncomfortable at first meeting. Number 7 is tempeh, which solves a different problem than any of the others. Tempeh is fermented whole soybeans bound by Rhizopus mold into a firm cake, developed in Indonesia and consumed there for at least several centuries. Fermentation breaks down the phytic acid in soy that otherwise binds to minerals and prevents their absorption, meaning tempeh provides zinc. and magnesium at significantly higher bioavailability than unfermented soy products. Protein content runs approximately 19 grams per 100 grams, with a complete amino acid profile comparable to meat, making it the most nutritionally complete plant protein source that fermentation produces. Traditional Indonesian communities were not running bioavailability studies. They were observing that populations eating tempeh regularly maintained better physical condition than those who did not, and passing down the preparation method accordingly. Is kombucha fermented tea originating in northeast China around 220 BC, which spread because it was liquid, portable, and culturally transferable. Number 9 is brine fermented pickles, saltwater lacto-fermented vegetables that produce live cultures and measurable probiotic content, categorically different from vinegar pickles, which are chemically preserved and biologically inert. Number 10 is kvass, a lightly fermented Eastern European bread drink that extracted B vitamins and live cultures from stale bread that would otherwise be wasted. All three spread because they were liquid. All three disappeared within a generation of refrigeration becoming widely available. That is the thread connecting all 10. Not health trends, not modern wellness culture. Practical necessity, sustained across centuries because the biological effects were observable and consistent. Abandoned within decades when the preservation problem appeared to be solved by other means, and without anyone quite noticing that the solution had traded away something it wasn't. Designed to preserve. The refrigerator kept food from spoiling. It did not keep food alive.